Athena, it's so funny. I had to hit record intentionally because you and I were chatting offline and I felt like it could have taken up the whole hour.
I think it could go all day, maybe not even just the hour.
Yes, yes. Listeners, this is what happened when Joe Rando is under the weather and he leaves girl talk free to run wild. So
And, it's his loss because he just misses some great time to chat with a couple of great ladies, so
exactly. And one of the things that he wished he was on here for that you and I were talking about offline is that he and his family, they actually dealt with a crazy battle with Lyme disease. And the whole purpose of this episode is kind of resilience and bouncing back. And I really want you to tell your story from your skiing days, and then your bout with Lyme disease and how that
Yeah.
chronic illness really redefined your approach to resilience and success.
Oh my goodness, it has been it feels like it's been many lives at this point. And I would love to speak with him about his family's journey with Lyme disease because it is something that affects people so differently, and we'll get into that. But I really, when I think of resilience and I think of grit and discipline and all of the tools that we, in our adult lives, unfortunately, life doesn't ever go to plan. Like, there's going to be bad things or unfortunate circumstances that we stumble upon, and it's not until we're in those that we really understand what we're made of, what our resilience levels are, if how we can get ourselves through challenges. And when I look at my story, I really believe that it started in my very young days as a professional skier. So, as I mentioned to you, I grew up in a little mountain town called Breckenridge in Colorado. I'm in Denver now, where I was able to leave school every day at 10:30 a.m., ski for the rest of the day. It counted as my health and PE credits. And I had a dad that was a professional skier and a real estate developer. And honestly, I wanted nothing to do with real estate because it's what he did. I wanted to forge my own path. But when it came to skiing, all I wanted was to, kind of follow in his footsteps. So I learned how to ski when I learned how to walk. I was 2 years old. And by the time I was 15, I had become a pretty accomplished downhill skier, but I switched over to freestyle skiing. So those are those crazy people that you see going through the half pipe and catching huge air out of it and going down courses, hitting huge jumps. That was me. I definitely was young and fearless. I think about it now, and all it does is make my joints hurt just thinking about it. But I had, I went pro at the age of 15. And basically that means I was gaining sponsorship. So I was getting paid to wear different people's, Under Armour for clothing and Skull Candy for headphones, and the list goes on. So at 15, I had this opportunity, and that really enabled me to start traveling the world to ski. So I skied about 300 days a year. Now, I should say in my 10 years of being a professional, I blew my knee 9 times. I had 2 neck surgeries. I broke just about everything you could break. So, if I wasn't skiing, I was rehabbing an injury. But what I had that I never appreciated at the time, and as I think many of us take a lot of things for granted, I took for granted the fact that I was being trained by some of the most elite level coaches in the world. And even as a young woman, I was held to such a high level of accountability that it was in to me, it was frustrating at the time. It was, if you're 2 minutes late for practice, you're doing burpees all day. Or if you're not listening to the coach and taking feedback, you're gonna hike the mountain. Whatever it may be, there was always a level of accountability. And I don't know if discipline's the right word because they were really strengthening me. I saw it as discipline for messing up, but what they were doing unknowingly to myself was showing me my toolkit for resilience and teaching me that if I could push through my mind telling me no and keep going, that I could accomplish so much more. And they taught me visualization, which is something that, I remember so clearly, just sitting at the top of runs, visualizing what my perfect, run would be and stomping every trick that I was trying. And I knew that if I needed to try a new trick, because usually it's going to be on snow if you need to try something new, that if I could land it in my head, that I would land it on snow. And these tools that they gave me, of course, I didn't recognize whatsoever at the time. But fast forward to finishing college, retiring from skiing, which was a complete identity crisis at the age of 24. I'm like, wait, all I was skiing. I did that 300 days a year. Like, who am I? So that was a really a rude awakening in terms of just really finding myself at a young age. But I about a year and a half into being an interior designer, I was realizing that the athlete in me, being a solo athlete and being an only child, that I needed to be an entrepreneur. I needed to be in charge of my own success and know that if I put in this much effort, the output is going to be equivalent. And not building someone else's dreams, but building my own. I just didn't know what that looked like. So I had a dear friend suggest real estate. I immediately was turned off. I was like, no, realtors are corny car salesmen. Like, don't want anything to do with it. She's like, you couldn't be more wrong. Sit down with the owner of my company, and just chat with him. And I did. And he taught me what relationship based business is. So I had the good fortune of mentoring under him and finding an amazing coach my first year in real estate. So right as I started to get my momentum, and I truly believe that coaching and mentorship in any business is one of the best gifts you can give yourself, because we don't know what we don't know. So if you're going about, your business the same way you always do, you don't even know where your blind spots are. And I think we need people from the outside looking in saying, "Hey, this is where you need to improve. This is where you can delegate." Um, and I needed that. But I kinda got to the top of my game. I was about 2.5 years into real estate, and I needed one final neck surgery, and it was a very minor one. I mean, I say minor, but I was getting new discs put in my neck. And when I was started recovering from this neck surgery, I went in the same very healthy, very fit adult that I was as a skier. And when I was recovering from surgery, I started getting all of these really weird like GI infections, and my fatigue levels were just skyrocketing, brain fog. And I'd never experienced anything like this before. I really used to be the Energizer Bunny, and I think I could, ski for 12 hours and hit the gym and go out and hang out with friends and do it all again the next day. And I think about that now and I just want to like hide under a pillow. But truly my world got completely flipped upside down really quickly. And I was fortunate enough to have a doctor that said, "Look, I think we should test you for Lyme disease." And I looked at him and told him he was crazy, that I'd never even seen a tick before, let alone seen a tick bite. But I had traveled the world. So it was it was a possibility that of course I could have been bit at any time in the last 15, 20 years. And Lyme kind of lays dormant in your system. So it waits for your immune system to be lowered. And then all of a sudden, when like a neck surgery, my immune system's weakened, and then it can take over.
Oh gosh.
And it is one
Really?
of, yeah, and it affects everyone differently. It attacks whatever your genetic weaknesses are. So it can turn up like psychiatric issues for one person, it can look like rheumatoid arthritis. For me, it turned into several autoimmune diseases, the worst of which basically is that my own body attacks the sheathing around my nerves. So I am constantly in incredible amounts of pain. And the stories that I could tell you of the last 10 years would take 10 hours probably, so I'll save you.
Is that in present day too? Like,
It's
you
gotten
look
so
so legit, like, you're so put together and you're
that's what's crazy about chronic illness and invisible illness is that you can look, and part of my toolkit for kind of getting myself going when I don't feel well. Like, I woke up this morning and felt like every bone in my body was broken. I was like, "I can't move." But I know that if I put on some of my favorite music super loud, if I just get myself to the shower, if I can get myself from the shower to go put on my makeup, which I call my war paint, these are the steps that help get me into a place where even when my body is not well or does not feel good, I'm able to still show up. And unfortunately, one of the most difficult parts of getting sick was learning that I had no delegation skills whatsoever. Coming from, again, being a one person show athlete and as an only child, and I realized that I needed help. Like, I think one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves is to learn what we excel at and where our time is best spent. And the activities that are not necessarily ones that you should be putting your energy into are things that you can give someone else an opportunity that loves those things to take over. But I had to learn how to delegate, unfortunately, and it took a while, and I'm still learning.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I'd say my pain levels, I've gone through every treatment you could imagine in the last 8 years. I get 4 plasma transfusions a month currently. I just got the port out of my chest and into my arm, which is really exciting because I don't have tubes hanging out of my chest. But it's an every single day battle, and the loss of identity in going from being a professional athlete to basically, trying to convince myself that I could get up w was really challenging, and it's been a huge, huge journey. Sorry, I'm talking so much.
No, that's why we had you on the show. Question for you is, so, like, your why for the first part of your life was skiing, and I'd imagine when you're going through all of these debilitating symptoms and troubleshooting what, like, I mean, just everything under the sun, like, what you say you put on your war paint, you say, "If I can get from this," but there has to be a why behind it. Like, how did you rediscover that when you shifted to the new identity? And for people that maybe they don't have Lyme disease, but are just struggling in life, how can they develop that why and then use it to
Yeah.
move them forward?
And honestly, that has been my biggest, the thing that has kept me going. And I truly believe that life never goes to plan, like I said, and we all face different forms of adversity in our lives, but it's never, the easy times in our lives that we look back and we say, "Oh my gosh, I grew so much from that." It's from the difficult times. So then it's a matter of, okay, if I know that I am, facing adversity in the midst of adversity, what am I going to do to not let myself get stuck in the mud? And for me, I have had the privilege of having a very strong why. And that is truly being able to create lifelong relationships with my clients. Like, my clients end up becoming my family. I stay in touch with them forever. If they ever need anything home related, they know that I'm there for them. And forming these relationships, I'm such a relational person, is what keeps me getting out of bed in the morning. I also started developing properties. So, being a Colorado native, being able to have a positive impact on the footprint of the city and what type of properties are being developed, and just really being, conscious of what I'm creating, because I think there's so much building out there that's just a little bit disappointing. So those have been my whys.
I was gonna start laughing because earlier you said I turned into my dad from a skiing standpoint, but I am
I
not
know.
a developer. So, joke's on you.
It's so, he grew up telling me a Frank Zappa lyric that's, "In 10 years, you'll be just like your parents." And I look at myself and I look at my parents, and I am like the perfect combination of the two of them. And I honestly wouldn't change it for the world. I appreciate it so much now. And he's been a huge force in helping me gain my footing in the world of development, because he pretty much built most of Breckenridge. He knows what he's doing. I've been figuring it out. But when we're in the midst of adversity, you know, I think as humans we have a tendency to overcomplicate everything. So whether it's how we're approaching our business, relationships, we overthink things, and it really comes down to finding what routines are your like saving grace. What are your go-tos for when things are not going right? Do you journal? Do you write out affirmations? Do you do your goals in the present tense? Do you have a therapist maybe? Like what, do you blast music to get yourself out of bed and like convince yourself that you can keep going? Like what are the habits, the rituals, the routines that you can build into your life that are just going to be like, I'm a big Atomic Habits fan. Like that book is one of my favorites, and it's like if we can just focus on trying to be 1% better every day, then that is like the greatest gift you can give yourself, especially when you're going through something really challenging.
I was gonna ask because you're talking about the routines and everything and looking at setbacks as like learning tools and building blocks, but when you're in the thick of it, it's kind of hard to see setbacks as learning tools. You're just like ridiculous and you're just in a bad mental state. So how do you reframe your mindset so that you can get to the point where you look at them as building blocks and learning tools and not just
I think that's time, honestly, because I think it's really important. I went through years of anger and sadness and mourning the life that I once had, because it really was a complete shift in my life and who I had always been. It was devastating, to be completely honest. So I think it's crucial for people to feel what they need to feel. And there's going to be feelings of anger and sadness and bouts of depression potentially. But the key is to not get stuck in that mud, I like to say. Like if you can take, when you feel like you've gotten past the worst of the pain or or suffering or whatever it is that you're going through, if you can say, okay, I'm just going to start by doing one thing a day that brings me joy, or one thing a day that helps me to recenter myself, whether, again, journaling, meditating, talking to someone. It really, like, it doesn't, I think the biggest issue with goals a lot of times, and with getting through things, is that it feels like an insurmountable huge task. And if you can break it up and just say, you know what, I'm going to start with one small activity that I know is good for me or brings me joy, working out, like whatever it may be, just start small and then make that a habit that becomes your fuel. And when you start to see the impact that habits can have on your mental state, you'll want to start adding on other little habits. And before you know it, you've created beautiful routines in your life that help you stay in a headspace of empowerment and like I can do this. And I think that it is really difficult to look inward at the time of going through something difficult and say, what am I learning from this? I don't even know that that's possible. Like I think everything that I've learned through my journey, I look back and realize that because I did certain activities, it helped grow in an entirely different part of me than I ever had focused on before. So rather than shifting like, okay, I have to figure out what I'm supposed to learn from this, like I personally don't know if that's possible, but what I do know is that when you make small positive changes and then you start to habitualize them, that is going to end up making you a completely, different person when you come out of this for the better. And I think that's where we should focus, not on the huge overwhelming picture.
Well, so let me ask you, so what would you say the biggest lesson you've learned has been throughout all of this and how it's helped you thrive through all of your adversity?
I would say that the biggest thing I've learned is that you as humans, I don't believe we're made to get through things alone. I can say for a fact that I would not be able to continue running my business or functioning whatsoever or not fall in a deep hole of depression if I didn't have a really strong, incredible tribe around me. And unfortunately, when you're going through difficult things, you really do learn who your people are because the superficial acquaintances will kind of weed themselves out. And that's a painful process in itself. But understanding like who the people are that you can rely on that have your back authentically and both in work and in your personal life because I truly, it's as corny as it is, like teamwork makes the dream work. Amen.
Well, it's so funny to piggyback off of that. Our favorite quote is flying solo in business doesn't mean you're alone. Like we just say
I
that
l-
time and time again.
I love it.
Well, and then on that note, we ask all of our guests this question. So I have to ask you, what is your favorite quote?
Yes.
What is your favorite quote about success?
So you're not gonna be surprised because it's pretty in line with what I'm talking about, and it's success is the sum of small efforts done day in and day out. So it really is like atomic habits. How can I be the best version of myself today, and how can I make sure that I'm showing up as that person?
Yes, listeners, go check that book out if you
It's a
have
good
not
one.
read it. It's so wonderful. Well, Athena, you are just so inspirational. Your story, I just think can motivate so many of our listeners. And I think it's one that people need to hear because sometimes, I mean, people only see what people post on Instagram or social or whatever, and it's looks so wonderful, but we're all going, everybody has something and everybody has a story and a history. So thank
Exactly.
you for just sharing everything and being vulnerable. And where can people find you if they want to learn more?
Well, thank you for having me and for the opportunity. Like, I love connecting. And if you go to my website, you can find all my social, my phone number, Instagram, email, and that's just www.athenabrownsonrealtor.com. Should I spell that?
I'll include it in the show notes, but
Cool.
yeah, what are the show
So
notes?
yeah, please go to the show notes. Obviously, like and subscribe, guys. This is a great
Yes,
podcast.
thank you.
And I'm just so grateful to be here. So thank you.
Yes, and listeners, I couldn't have said it better myself. Please like and subscribe, share it with a friend, and we will see you next week on the Aspiring Solopreneur.